This is the story of the one. As a custodial supervisor at a high school, he knows that during cold and flu season, germs spread fast. It's why he partners with Grainger to stay fully stocked on the products and supplies he needs, from tissues to disinfectants to floor scrubbers. Also that he can help students, staff, and teachers stay healthy and focused. Call 1-800-GRAINGER, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
This is VOCM Open Line. Call 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626. The views and opinions of this program are not necessarily those of this station. The biggest conversation in Newfoundland and Labrador starts now. Here's VOCM Open Line host Paddy Daly.
Well, all right, and good morning to you. Thank you very much for tuning into the program. It's Thursday, September the 4th. This is Open Line. I'm your host, Paddy Daly. David Williams. He's produced the program. Let's get it going. If you're in the St. John's metro region, the number to dial to get in the queue and on the air is 709-273-5211. Elsewhere, toll-free long distance, 1-888-590-VOCM, which is 8626. So let's check in at the final Grand Slam tennis tournament of the year. Of course, the U.S. Open and the Canadians. So yesterday, hotly anticipated quarterfinal, Felix Auger-Aliassime from Canada, taking on Aussie Alex de Minaur, who's the 8th seed. Felix coming in as the 25th seed. De Minaur has never been to a semi at a Grand Slam. Felix has. He's been to the Grand Slam semis at the U.S. Open back in 2021. I sat down to watch the match as best I could. It was a particularly sloppy affair. Both guys obviously extremely nervous. And Auger-Aliassime gets through. So he wins in 4 sets. He goes on to play the world number 1, Jannik Sinner, tomorrow. If he plays like that, it will be 6-love, 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 no doubt about it. So he's got to up his game. And on the double side, Gabby Dabrowski from Ontario, I think she's from Ottawa, her and her double partner, the Kiwi, Aaron Routliffe, they're off to the finals at the U.S. Open in the doubles, also on Friday. Okay, there you go. All right, what's this? This is just a story about fair warning for the parents of teenagers who operate off-road vehicles. We all know the rules, or we all should know the rules, regarding wearing a helmet and the age with which you need adult supervision, what have you. So apparently, 15-year-old, the RNC Traffic Services saw a couple of dirt bikes on Kenmount Road. When the bikes saw the cops, then they, of course, fled. One of the bikes stalled, and the 15-year-old was ticketed for using an off-road vehicle on the highway without a driver's license, no license plate, and no insurance. So also, the boy's mother got a ticket for allowing the unsupervised use of that particular machine. So we all know the rules. You don't want to catch yourself in that predicament. Okay, there we go. It'd be nice to know exactly what happened to those who were caught breaching the province's fire ban, which is up for review on the 7th of this month. So whether or not you think it's heavy-handed or whatever the case may be, the rules were in place, people knew it, and willfully and knowingly broke the restriction. So it'd be nice to know what's going on there, because remember, the fines at one point were $75, and then they were jacked up to $50,000. It's highly unlikely that people caught have the $50,000, so the threat then was to go to jail. So what actually happened with anybody caught on that front? And then it's the person caught lighting fires in the downtown of St. John's. That wasn't necessarily just breaking the fire ban. That was arson. It was lighting the place on fire. So it'd be nice to get an update as to exactly what's going on there. In addition, yet another story and a headline: someone pulled over with $17,000 in outstanding fines. A breach of a court order, breach of probation, and da-da-da-da-da. So the vehicle impounded and body brought down to the clink. So the concept there, and we'll keep bringing it up because the current government has brought it up, is some sort of mechanism to recoup all these outstanding fines. There's millions and millions of dollars of unpaid fines out there. So at one point, they were talking about, at the government level, putting people in jail, which doesn't make a whole lot of sense given the fact there's nowhere to put them. Secondly, is the thought of community service. I just think that's such a great idea. I really do. They kept talking about it, but haven't acted on it. It'd be nice to know if that's actually going to be a thing at some point into the future. What do you think? All right. Back to school yesterday for the province's K-12 students. For the most part, of course, schools closed at CBS because of the water issue. Oh, yeah, the state of emergency has been lifted in Conception Bay South. So anything on the education front, let's talk about it. So whether it be the Education Accord and their 4 pillars, I don't know how many parents of school-age children have read it, but it's an interesting read. It's a huge book of some 400 pages. But predictably, come into work this morning, open up my email to get email from several families saying that their son or daughter, and I'm not going to mention the schools, they didn't want me to, their son or daughter went to school yesterday requiring certain additional supports, and again this year not in place on the first day of school. So we know the province talked about $20 million to hire some 400 different people to work in the province's K-12 system, but was your son or daughter accommodated with the need that the school understands? And it's not necessarily the school's fault that someone hasn't been hired and put in place on time, but it's happening again this year. So let's talk about that. Secondly, this is an issue regarding scheduling, and this is more than one school too. Parents going to drop off their kids, and I'll just use one particular example, Beachy Cove Elementary. So, a massive amount of road work going on, and some of it just started before the school year started. You know, don't we have a little better idea of scheduling? If road work needs to be done around a school, is it not a better opportunity to do it during the summer when the school is not open, as opposed to in the fall when the school reopens? Same thing around where I live, Innes Avenue. Fair bit of road work going on there. They just put a sidewalk in, and that's a good thing and needed to be replaced. But reports from several different schools that road work going on, and so what would be a 5 or 10 minute drop-off affair for your son or daughter, they're reporting that it was 30, 35, 40 minutes worth of drop-offs, traffic being redirected down the wrong way in a one-way lane inside the school parking lot, what have you. So can we not figure out how to do the road work around schools when school is not open? I don't know. What do you think? Sticking with this, and this is early childhood education. So we've heard many stories about the deafening silence with regulated childcare operators proposing for expansion or to open up a new facility and having a hard time getting it done. Eventually, the two most notable cases, they were attended to. But this is about those regulated childcare spaces, then they require the operating grant from the government. But here's the problem. And I'll just read this directly from an anonymous operator. I know who it is, but we'll leave the person's name out of it for fear of repercussion, as they say. The agreement that they signed with the province effectively silences the operators. So it states that any communication about the grant, whether through media, public reports, or even conversations with outside parties, must be approved by the government. The centres cannot release any information, issue reports, or make any statements without departmental oversight. And when that communication is approved, the operators have to go on and give credit to the department. So we need these operators. Of course, it's a regulated space, but they need some semblance of independence, and they should be able to offer transparent accounts of exactly how the funding is working or not working to the families of the children that are in the facility and to their staff or otherwise. So if the department is confident in its policy, its programs, procedures, then if that's the case, then why can't we allow operators just to voice their genuine concerns? I mean, we need them to open up their facilities. We need them to be appropriately staffed and appropriately paid. But if and when there's gaps, then they should be able to say it, shouldn't they? So it's being considered as some sort of muzzle. And one of the comments in one of the sentences is, childcare operators should not have to choose between funding stability and freedom of speech. But of course, in this country, freedom of expression. So not ideal, to say the least. What do you think? Let's talk about it. Oh, and I'll bring this up one more time, wouldn't it be nice for the leveling of the playing field and some control for the parents or caregivers' pocketbooks if you didn't have to keep up with the Joneses and buy the latest and greatest sneakers and hoodies and jeans or whatever, and we all went to school in a uniform? I don't know. I get in trouble for saying it, but I enjoy it. All right, what's this? All right, let's go back to the trades. So yesterday we mentioned that Equinor has settled on a company as the preferred bidder, an agreement in principle to build the FPSO, of course, the Floating Production, Storage and Offloading Unit. BW Offshore is the company. So we'll see if it ever does indeed get sanctioned. But on that front, Trades NL has made a pretty significant release yesterday regarding benefits agreements. They're looking back over the course of the past 35 years. They say in that time frame, 225,000 jobs, equating to over $16 billion of labor income, happened within the province. This, of course, is important stuff. So they say, we have developed a world-class workforce by constructing, fabricating, and maintaining industrial projects. They look at things like White West Rose, concrete gravity structure, Voisey's Bay underground operations or expansion. Then they talk about all of the major projects that could be in the offing in the oil industry. And we know that there's plenty of inklings that the bulk of the bulk of the work that might happen if Beta Nord gets sanctioned would be some subsea work. Then they talk about gas. The province has released some numbers regarding the natural gas off our shores, trillions of cubic feet. yet to be a royalty regime established. Of course, there won't be any action unless there's a royalty regime. So they talk about that. Then they talk about hydro. And we'll get into hydro now in a second. Okay. So they make a point of the Atlantic Accord. The province must be the principal beneficiary of offshore developments. They're talking about minimum amounts of construction in the province. They want it to be 68% on all oil and gas projects and 86% on any hydro development. I believe Bob Fiander from Trades and Now might be joining us. I won't steal all his thunder here this morning by getting too deep into it, but they're not wrong. I mean, it's one thing when the province negotiates benefits agreements and talks about royalties. We might be barking up the wrong tree when we talk about equity stake offshore, but that's another conversation. So the royalties, good thing. Expanded tax base, good thing. But there's nothing quite like for the individual to get a job. Money flowing to the province is okay, but money flowing to your pocketbook is better. So they talk about minimum thresholds to be satisfied on any potential mega projects into the future. So maybe, Bob, if you have a chance, please join us on the show and we can dig a little deeper into those. I think that's a pretty important conversation, no doubt about it. All right, Upper Churchill MOU. So that's one reference to hydro. And I guess that means, the expansion at the Upper Churchill, the potential for Gull Island, the transmission lines and the like. We know that there's now been a big political snag thrown into the MOU negotiations when Michael Wilson, one of the members of the three-person oversight panel, has resigned. And we can get into some of the things that Mr. Wilson pointed to. Basically it's about price into the future. So a statement came out, or media release, from the independent Churchill River Negotiation Oversight Panel. Okay, we know it was established at the beginning of this particular calendar year, and they've made a couple of indications about their role. The panel clarifies that it is an independent party that oversees and evaluates the process of negotiations following the MOU towards definitive agreements. It regularly reports its findings and advice to Cabinet. The panel itself does not participate in negotiations. Okay. They all signed a confidentiality agreement. Then they go on to say, due to commercial confidentiality of ongoing negotiations, the public report does not disclose detail of the panel's findings and recommendations. The panel's reports have to be informed by review and analysis of hundreds of pages of internal documents and by interviews with hydro executives, financial, legal, technical, power market advisors, With minor exceptions, the MOU is not a legally binding document. We know the MOU is a mechanism that commits the parties to further negotiations. What's not included in this particular media release, and Dennis Brown is more than welcome to call the show, is any comment or reflection on Michael Wilson's resignation. Which, I don't know what kind of weight you're giving it, but it's not insignificant. And the comments that he has made are not insignificant. So, a couple of questions. What does the panel think of that particular decision by Mr. Wilson? Has Mr. Wilson been replaced? And if so, by whom? And who's that person? What is their professional background? So, one of the hamstrings for the panel, the oversight panel, is they're simply only able to adjudicate and evaluate the contents of the MOU as opposed to things that might change, considerations into the future. Now, they might be part of the formal negotiations, but that's not a whole lot to understand because shouldn't there be some sort of comment coming from... Now, the Premier continues to defend the MOU and talks about things like Schedule F and the floating target of value if the pricing for electricity changes in the future, those types of things. But I don't think that conversation is anywhere close to gone. And if you want to pick it up where I'd left off or add your comments to it, let's do exactly that here this morning. How are we doing on the phone, Dave? Let's get it going. All right, so this weekend coming is the first of two additional weekends granted to the people of the province by the Federal Department of Fisheries and Oceans for a couple more weekends of the recreational food fishery. Thank you so much. Sticking with water and fish. Aquaculture has been the savior of some small communities in the province, and the economic boon is real. So are the environmental concerns. So, for the second time this summer, Maui Canada East is reporting a huge mass die-off. Now, haven't given us specific numbers, but there's a report filed by the company dated the 31st of August. Approximately 1.7 million farm salmon are affected by what they're calling an abnormal mortality event exceeding 10% of the site population. That's at Harvey Hill East, Harvey Hill South, and Broad Cove Marine Sites, Harbour Breton. They won't say exactly how many fish died or how many have survived. So they do talk about some of the remaining population being harvested. They're investigating. But here we go. It not only comes with economic loss to the company, obviously, but some of the things that we have pointed to, like since 2019, Maui itself, some 2.6 million dead fish had to be removed. At that point, remember the kerfuffle? The province yanked their license. Maui apologized to the province, and they get back in business. They point to the cause of these die-offs to be warmer water temperatures, and that's in association with decreased oxygen levels, which begs a pretty big question. There's no reason to think that warming water trends won't continue in the warming direction. So if that's the cause, and with the warming water decrease oxygen levels, then what's the future of open pen fin fish farming in this province? In many other parts of the country or the world, they've stopped doing it, and they've moved the projects onshore. Now, more expensive, obviously, but if that is the cause, why does anybody in the aquaculture industry think that that's not going to remain the cause for summers yet to come? So the die-off numbers are real, and of course aquaculture has a lot of questions and concerns associated with it, and not all bad. It's part of the food chain. Some people appreciate the farmed salmon. Some, of course, wouldn't touch it, but your thoughts on those stories? Let's do it. All right, and people keep asking me when the provincial election is going to be. I don't know. So by the latest date available is September 16th to allow for the shortest campaign available, which is 28 days. That would see us go to the polls on October 14th. So you got to believe it soon. Lots of announcements coming from the provincial Liberals, lots of announcements coming from the NDP, and good on them for their cost of the platform. We can dig into that a little further. And, Tory's been asked about things like a bus, whatever. Anyway, you want to talk about that? Let's go. All right. So apparently the Prime Minister and Cabinet are meeting in Toronto. I believe today is day 2. And a lot on the go. So for starters, they've invited one of the architects of what they call Project 2025, which, of course, we're told the current administration didn't know anything about it, but, of course, using it as a very distinct roadmap. The architect is a fellow named Kevin Roberts. He's president of the Heritage Foundation. He's being consulted by Mark Carney today about, I guess, the president's playbook or something. Seems like a pretty strange relationship to talk about things as important as international trade or trade with the Americans. But anyway, that's happening. Then they've got to get back to the kitchen table issues, right? Which I think are pretty important to those listening. We know there's a budget coming, and okay. Then we know that there's been demands made by the Prime Minister across all of the departments about finding savings, floating targets from 7 to 15%. One story that gets plenty of traction is CRA, Service Canada. So apparently the Prime Minister has sent CRA back to the drawing board to devise what they call a 100-day plan to improve the service at the call centres. It's been very, very difficult. There's different numbers coming from the union that represents the employees. That's called the Union of Taxation Employees. They say 3,300 call centre employees lost their jobs since May of 2024. As a result, fewer than 5% of callers on average reach an agent. Now, CRA uses different numbers. They say from January through July, CRA received about 21.5 million calls, and roughly 14% were handled by agents. Okay. So are there job cuts coming or not? And, people can't have it both ways, even though many people would like to have it both ways, is if you want public sector jobs to go by the wayside, through attrition or otherwise, then that's going to compromise some so-called counter-service. It's frustrating to begin with when we deal with CRA. The tax code itself is unnecessarily complicated. People are waiting weeks and months to have their issues reconciled. But what's the solution here? For many areas of life, artificial intelligence is going to be a problem. But for others, like use of a chatbot, so that you can actually get your issues dealt with, because the algorithm can program all the information required for something like artificial intelligence to provide swift answers to concerned 21.5 million worth of calls. So we'll see what results in this so-called 100-day plan, but that's pretty interesting stuff. Okay. The Conservative Party of Canada, in a release yesterday, are talking about the temporary foreign worker program. They quote numbers as to how many of these foreign worker permits have been granted in the first 6 months of 2025. They're using 105,000. The promised cap was 82,000, so blown right past that. What they're calling for is not a hard cap on the temporary foreign worker program. They're talking about its complete and full elimination. No temporary foreign workers. They refer to things like wage suppression and what have you. Just a reminder, there is no federal wage subsidy for a temporary foreign worker. They make very specific mention of places like Tim Hortons. So, Tim Hortons have hired 1,131% more than Tim Hortons over the 4 years alone. At Tim Hortons over 4 years. All right. So for some industries, temporary foreign workers not being a thing of the future is going to be a problem. I imagine we'll hear from the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. Yes, we all remember being teens, and youth employment is at a staggering terrible spot. It's the worst in more than a quarter century when you back out the pandemic. So everyone knows that to be true. When I speak to people who are in positions of authority and or owner-operators of places like entry-level jobs, fast food and otherwise, they say it's not about not wanting to hire a Canadian. They're talking about hiring people that want a permanent full-time job, as opposed to a summer job, for instance. Now, you can say that's good or bad or right or wrong, but the way the program has been abused has led us down this path. For companies that were abusing the system by using bogus labor market impact assessments, that has caused a problem. There is no monetary upside to hire a temporary foreign worker, other than if you back out things like training and retraining and the turnover that they see in some of these entry-level jobs. But is it even wise to eliminate the program in full? I mean, even in this province, there are some fish plants, for instance, that they had to rely on temporary foreign workers to get the job done. So the cap needs to be abided by. If the cap was set or promised at 82,000 and already this year 105,000 permits have been issued, that's a problem. I completely understand. But a full-on elimination, does that make sense in the big scheme of things? I'll leave it up to you. All right, we mentioned yesterday that we're dealing with shortage across the gamut in healthcare. That includes paramedics. Jerry O is the president of NAPE. They represent the province's paramedics that work in the public sector. He joins us right after this, and then we're speaking with you. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number one. Say good morning to the president at NAPE. That's Jerry Earl. Jerry, you're on the air.
Good morning, Paddy, and trust you're doing well.
Trust I'm doing fine. Thanks. How about you?
Doing great.
All right, let's dig into the paramedics issue. You know, we talk about shortages and variety of disciplines in the healthcare system, and that includes paramedics. What do we know?
Paddy, and I'm sure we've certainly had conversations in VOCM and other media outlets have reported over the years what NAPE has been saying about a shortage of EMS personnel, like right across Newfoundland and Labrador. And then just probably about 18 months ago now, we know it became one provincial system. We have always been concerned, even back before we represent the entirety of the system, the shortages and stories have broke. We've had conversations around a term that many don't like used now, still use it because it's used in other jurisdictions of the country around red alerts, and that comes down to insufficient human resources and then the physical units to respond. And shortages of staff is one piece of that, but then obviously there's other factors that's been talked about as well, like offload delays at hospitals. So we know, and it's good to hear Dr. Parfrey, the now CEO of the Newfoundland Labrador Health the corporation, recognizing and giving credit. Like we've had to, I sat on the Health Accord with Dr. Parfrey, for example, and there was a large group and was conversations down there around the EMS system. And I'm pleased to hear him now as the CEO of Newfoundland Labrador Health Services outright saying that he acknowledges there's a shortage. That's the first thing I've always said. You got to acknowledge there's a shortage and give credit to Dr. Parfrey for outright saying that.
Yeah, it's one thing to acknowledge it, yes. But we were told that the amalgamation or the merging of all these 60 separate private sector contracts would not be the panacea, but a good step forward, because we had concerns with the disparity in the rate of pay and responsibilities and on-call pay and all those types of things. But it doesn't seem to have made a big difference insofar as recruiting and, most importantly, retaining paramedics. So are you hearing specific reasons? Because offload time at the hospital and the number of red alerts isn't really an on-the-job issue paramedics have much control over. So what are they saying?
One of the big pieces in this, and there has been a significant piece, and I know what negotiations are like, there was a significant negotiation that's been taking place when they named the entity that would be running, and that's where we had differences, but we need to move forward on this. The entity that was going to be managing the system, they have been in extensive negotiations. That was being hoped to be concluded this past winter. What I understand now, they are pretty well near conclusion or about to conclude those negotiations, where that entity will come in there and manage the system. So it was almost like there was a void for a year where things stayed stagnant. That was most unfortunate for a long period of time. But what I'm hoping to see come out of that now is that somebody will now really turn their attention to identifying, do we have sufficient ambulances and resources, for example, in Arbor Britain or Tulling Gauge or St. Anthony. Certainly don't have them here in the metro region. We're seeing the problems over and over. So we're open that we can sit face-to-face. It was almost like it was an interim management team. I'm not sure they were given the ability and fairness to them to be able to make significant decisions knowing they were not going to be continuing. They'll probably work in the system, but they will not be the decision maker. So now that this is about to conclude or conclude what I'm hearing very soon, could be even this week. So we would want to set the table then, because that's where those discussions took place. That entity will come in now and say, do we do a staff review, I'm assuming, for Metro? Even recent days, we're having conversations in the Metro area of converting, because we always hear about retention. A number of, say, temporary employees there now going in and saying, you're not temporary any longer. We need you. We're going to make you permanent. So those discussions have actually been taking place in recent days. So I think that will happen across the province. One thing I've heard from Newfoundland Lateral Services, and I'm assuming now this is Medivy we're talking about that will be operating the system, I'm assuming they'll come in now and say, yeah, we agree with what Newfoundland Lateral Service said. There's a shortage. Here's how we go about filling those positions and do that as expeditiously as possible, because it's not just us that's recruiting for these professionals that work in the system, whether it be EMRs, dispatchers, advanced care paramedics, or PCPs, primary care paramedics. So we needed to get on the ground. Like Nova Scotia, for example, went as far as Australia to recruit some people.
Yeah, I saw that part of the story. You know, just for context, so if we look at things like shortages, say for registered nurses, we get numbers. Well, so, you know, there's X number of 100 vacancies. Do we have an actual number regarding paramedics? You know, what would be a full complement and how many were short, whether that be the required number per ambulance or per airplane or whatever the case may be? Do we actually have hard and fast numbers?
And that's the unfortunate thing, Paddy. Again, like with the legacy boards, there was not consistent data available. Again, we established a working group which include health community services, executive representatives in Newfoundland Services, and frontline paramedics. So that data, unfortunately, Eastern Health had great data on vacancies and that, but if you went to another entity previously, they didn't. So there was inconsistent data. We couldn't even find out the actual staffing numbers, believe it or not. But that should flow now from a single entity in the province, now managed with a dedicated management system to EMS. Unfortunately, some of the EMS petty in the province, I hate to use this term, but it was pretty well operated off the corner of a manager's desk as a secondary job. Like they may have been managing an ICU and said, oh, we got to manage the ambulance system as well. And we always argued it could never work like that. So one thing it is, we would have a dedicated management system responsible for emergency services. I'm hoping, part of the process behind the scenes, they have been working on what they believe the numbers are. I'm hoping they'll share that with us, and then we'll be able to say, yeah, we think that's sufficient, because we listen to the frontline members themselves. They say that's not enough, then we'll be certainly pushing back and saying that is not enough to service the call volume, because we know what the call volumes are.
Yeah.
So that's a piece, and that's one thing I'm really open to, this consistent data that you or I can sit down and have a discussion on, because even, Patty, if you reached out now, VOCM or any other media, you just can't get that data. Like we used to try to tip it in the past. We had good data for one board, but the other boards, we were basically told it didn't exist.
And it should exist somewhere.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and we'll keep chasing this particular story, obviously. And for people working in as first responders, dispatchers, and otherwise, it's completely silly and counterproductive to not be allowed to use the phrase red alert. Without having that number, then we can't paint a clear picture of exactly what wait times and response times look like. I mean, it's just ridiculous. We've got to get away from that.
Yeah, and absolutely. Like whatever the term is, and it's one that's accepted in standards. Like I said, on our national union board, our national union represent paramedics in other provinces, and they talk about red alerts. I'm not sure what the fear is around that. Basically, what it's saying is, if we're in red alerts, there's no ambulance available, and that's happening or has happened all too frequent. I'm certainly open in the not too distant future that will become something that we rarely hear of rather than a regular occurrence, because it is a regular occurrence, and we've heard many stories, and actually most stories don't get to the public. But again, go back to a number of issues that we have, like we were fighting for years to say why are paramedics, Newfoundland, Labrador, EMS, EMRs not even compensated on par with Atlantic Canada. That has been addressed and already addressed, actually. Even just something as simple of whether you're in Metro St. John's or Arbor Britt now or in Twillingate, you wear the same uniform. You have benefits now. We had EMS personnel. We talked about trying to retain and recruit people. Like many in the private system before, they didn't have a pension plan, they didn't have a group insurance plan. So even that coming into the system we have now, that will help with the retainment and recruitment. And then we introduced there in the province like our own ACP programs. You said to leave the province to train, but right now, somebody graduating from K-12 system here in the province could go into St. John's or go into Stephenville, actually train at home to serve in their own province. So those things have happened, and I see a lot more of that now, that we can actually focus attention not on the bargaining. Now, we weren't part of this, on the bargaining between government and Medivy, that if that is done or close to being done, that we can focus our attention on providing a world-class service here in Newfoundland and Labrador, certainly equivalent to anywhere in the country.
Fair enough. This might not be necessarily impacting you and your members, but it's been a tense couple of years here with organised labour in federally regulated industries. Workers order back to work at the rails, the ports, Canada Post, Air Canada flight attendants. So it's becoming one of those go-tos. Now, I know these are federally regulated industries, but these things have a funny way seeping into provincial orders as well. So when you speak with other organised labour leaders around the country, like I've received emails from many organisations, they talk about things like general strike, which was threatened in Ontario when we talked about the provinces, that province's teachers. So what's the organised labour temperature like? Because these stories are becoming extremely common.
It's quite elevated because, and again, sitting on our national union, which is NUPCI, I get to sit at a national board with J.P. Ornick, which is the president of a union comparable to NAPE, certainly much bigger because of the size of the province, and I know the frustration they're having. Not lost on NAPE. Some tend to have a short memory, but I remember the days. I was around when we've had previous governments. I go back to the years of Danny Williams when people don't realize not only did he legislate NAPE back to work, he legislated changes to a collective agreement. So this is not new. It's just starting to come about, I think, because some of the corporate entities and some of the political will. NAPE itself is starting a very long preparation now to get ready for our contract to expire next year. Our message is clear. We are not prepared to have any government or corporation interfere with our constitutional rights to go to a bargaining table and the right of a worker. If they can't, like there's an old process you go through, if they can't, the right to withdraw their services. That should be a fundamental right. But here we have bills at the federal government, like with Air Canada, for example, we're immediately interfering. The best deals are reached at bargaining tables, and if one side knows they have an advantage to legislation, like Air Canada did in this last thing with CUPE, they actually openly said, the CEO openly said, we were relying on the federal piece of legislation. That's totally unfair to the frontline workers.
Yeah, it's becoming the go-to. Like consecutive orders back to work. Now they'll say, trying to prevent economic damage, and I understand that argument. But boy, oh boy, there have been instances where unions have refused to abide by any back-to-order work orders, and even if they fail jail time or fines or what have you, and that includes the representatives of the Air Canada flight attendants, and they were saying, no, we're just not going to do it. You know what?
It sounds like petty history is repeating itself, and maybe many of your listening audience, but maybe some do. Maybe you and I remember. I remember I was a young union activist. I remember when the leader of my union at that time, Fraser March, for example, was jailed for just what you said. Basically said, you can have this legislation. Workers are going to step up and defy it, and that time NAPE did. That day could come again. That day could be next year for us. Because, again, you can't have it where corporations or governments have the upper end. We talk about economic damage. Just imagine what these frontline workers, like, go back to like Air Canada. Like, I can't believe in 2025 we're even having a discussion at a bargaining table about unpaid work. That should be a non-starter right off the bat, but I can't believe it. And there's a whole host of issues that we will be going on behalf of our members. Like, we'll start what we call our component conventions now, just in a couple of weeks' time, actually the first ones. We'll get our frontline negotiating teams in place, and our message is clear. We're prepared to go to a bargaining table and negotiate respectfully, recognizing, because legislation covers us too, but we're not prepared to have either a government or a corporation try to leverage that legislation against us unfairly, and we will do what is necessary.
Appreciate the time, Jerry. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paddy, for the opportunity.
My pleasure. Bye-bye. That's Jerry Earle, of course, the president at NAPE. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go. Line number 1. Jeffrey, you're on the air.
Hey, Paddy. How you doing?
Doing okay. Thanks. How about you?
Good. I wanted to pick up from your monologue about Mike Wilson's resignation and the MOU.
Sure. Let me just add one point of clarification here. You know, I ask questions purposefully to provoke calls sometimes, right? It's kind of what I do.
Yes, of course.
So, of course, Michael Wilson has been replaced, and I know it, but I was just, wondering why there hasn't been public announcements and statements from the panel about Michael Wilson's resignation and the replacement, who was a guy named Guy Holborn, a professor of business, economics, public policy at the Ivy School of Business at the University of Western, and a pretty extensive background. I just wanted to pop that in there, and you go right ahead, sir.
Yeah, so I just think this needs to be the headline issue from now until the deal is either figured out or not figured out. I think it's the biggest decision the province is going to face this century. I think that the way NL Hydro went about this process is wrong, and I think that, before with some of the people that were speaking out, there was some motivations or easy discredits you could look at. But once this person who was selected to be on the independent oversight committee comes out with that 5-page letter, if that doesn't start ringing alarm bells for everyone in the province, I don't know. At that point, it's like, what's it going to take for people to understand that maybe this isn't the best deal for the province?
That's a big word, maybe. And it's probably doing a lot of heavy lifting there, just like when we say if. My question, Jeffrey, and this is a legitimate question, not necessarily for you, but for everybody, is when the thought is as plain as, did we get the best deal or not? I don't know how that gets answered. I really do not know how that gets answered. Does Hydro-Quebec... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think you start from the process. Maybe to start, they should have unbundled and done the purchase power agreement for Churchill Falls as one negotiation, Gull Island as a separate MOU, because at least that way, you and I can argue about, is the Churchill Falls deal fair, and you and I can argue about the Gull Island deal. But once you lump them together, if you don't like one part and I don't like the other, we don't like the whole deal. And if they unbundle it, I think that's an easier thing to sell to people, one way or the other. Possibly.
I mean, the complexity of 4 projects, even though it's really 2 projects, because expansion at the upper and or Gull requires transmission because of the obvious reasons. I wonder whether or not that was just straight up non-starter for Hydro-Quebec. The reason I think it probably was is because for decades, we've been trying to renegotiate the 69 contract. It went so far as to take them to court at least 7 times to come up short every time. So I don't know whether or not that was ever the starting point. We've tried that for quite a long time, and we haven't gotten anywhere with the Hydro-Quebec.
Well, then at that point, I think about what Burn Coffey had said when he analyzed it. And he said, we never tried to go to another buyer or another party, either with the existing Churchill Falls assets or with development to Gull Island. We always had the laser focus on Hydro-Quebec as the partner. And then that does seed a fair bit of leverage in those negotiations. We didn't even bother, according to Mike Wilson, we didn't even bother to get an assessment of the value of Gull Island when we were talking about equity partnerships in it. So I'm with you. Maybe it's the best deal. That word maybe is doing a lot of work there. But I don't know if we followed a process to verify that it was. And I think that's why NL Hydro is having such a problem in the public relations of getting people on board with the deal. As more people get re-engaged with this issue, it seems as though support for this is eroding. And I think it's, for a variety of reasons that they went about it maybe not the best way from the start. It
could be a flawed process. I won't disagree with that. Insofar as the value of Gull, Michael Wilson also made quick mention. He also pointed to things like value, price, and cost. Equity is just a percentage of ownership. That's not a real big deal on this one. But value, as Burn Coffey pointed to, I think is an important conversation to be had, because price and cost are specifics. Value is a different one. And value is a floating target when you talk about price elasticity and options into the future for stacking out renewables or whatever the case may be. But those three distinctions, I think, are lost on many people that are, following along with this issue and or reading some of the reports coming from the panel. So what are your thoughts on that? Because there is something missing in the value conversation.
Yeah, to me, I think that power and electricity is such an abstract thought. So I try to think of it in terms of if I was walking on the street in Toronto and I picked up 2 Leaf tickets to the Toronto Maple Leafs, you've got the face value of the ticket. That's what they cost. If you go to sell them for more or less, that's the value. And to me, the face value of the power is what it costs at Churchill Falls, which is 0.2 cents to produce. But the value is probably somewhere between the price they got for it in the new MOU, 2.5 cents, and the replacement cost Hydro-Quebec has said, 16 to 18 cents. Somewhere in that spectrum, that's the value. And to me, I tend to agree with Burn Coffee. It's a fixed value contract. So it's $33.8 billion. That's what they're committed to pay Newfoundland for all the power that's in the agreement. If inflation changes or if various other elements macroeconomically change, Newfoundland's only seeing present value dollars of $33.8 billion, and I think that's the point that Hydro needs to explain better. If my assessment of that is wrong, they need to convince people like me and the other, the people I've read to kind of crib those that belief. But yeah, I think about tickets to a concert or tickets to the Maple Leafs. There's a face value, and then there's what you pay on the secondary market. And why is Newfoundland potentially giving that power away for less than the face value on the ticket?
It's a fair question. Inside that analogy, and people talk about what something is worth. Like, for instance, my house. My house is worth exactly what someone's willing to pay for it. And when you talk about picking up tickets off the street, so you could either, the face value of the ticket price is what the ticket price is. But if you go to scalp it, if I'm standing alongside you and I'm trying to scalp a pair of Leaf tickets for $500 for the pair, but buddy standing next to me is selling them, reasonably similar seats for $475, I'm buying the $475s. When it comes to power, it's all about what's the next expensive or least cost option available inside the market itself. Because if I'm in Connecticut and Hydro-Quebec is offering me a 25-year deal at 5 cents a kilowatt hour, but New Brunswick Power is offering me the exact same term contract but at 4.75 cents, that's what you buy. So the value is kind of a pretty difficult... It's a difficult thing to put into words and to put into a contract. Now, Schedule F does clearly say it is not a fixed price like so many people are saying.
Every time it's fixed value. It's not. They're right. It's not a fixed price. It's a fixed value. The price escalates up and down to come up with what the value of the power is, but it's still at the end of this deal, as it is in the MOU, Newfoundland's getting $33.8 billion. Now, if that $33.8 billion, because of inflation, is worth way more or way less, the value of that dollar, it's reflective of what that value of that dollar is. So,
I understand. Yep.
Yeah, I know. I just meant for your audience, and like Mike Wilson says, we all get kind of cost, price, and value interchangeable, but they're not.
Absolutely, they're not. One
not
is
to correct you on your show or whatever.
Pardon me.
Not to cut you off on your own show.
Oh no, listen, your opportunity to talk, given the fact that you made time for the program, is most welcomed. Jeffrey, anything else you'd like to add to it this morning?
Yeah, I think that, everyone who's listening to Open Line is engaged in these issues. They're passionate about the province. They're passionate about, politics, issues, society. But we've got to break it out of this audience, and we've got to start talking to people who aren't engaged in this issue, get their thoughts, inform them, say, look, this is the biggest decision the province is going to take in a century. If you're listening and you think this is a great deal, you should tell people. If you think it's an average or bad deal, you should tell people. But this has to become a bigger talking point in the province. Yeah, there's no doubt.
Fair enough. I'll just throw this out there. Look, and this will get me in trouble with everybody, which is perfect. I think there are exaggerations of the pros and exaggerations of the cons being offered. I really, truly believe that. And I'll take a lot of heat for that, but I believe it. I also think that historical context is playing a pretty massive role here. I'll bounce this off. You'll get your perspective. I think if the conversation was this negotiation is taking place between the province of Newfoundland and Labrador, Newfoundland and Labrador Hydro, and Emera and Nova Scotia Power and the government of Nova Scotia, it would sound different. It would have a different tone, a different tenor. What do you think?
I think that absolutely. I think there's a large segment of Newfoundland who seems to have some type of grudge for Quebec on a variety of levels. And I wish we would just check that at the door and say, look, they're the neighbor. They're like, now on one hand, when they talk about Gull Island, they say Hydro-Quebec is the best manager for hydroelectric development in North America. So on one hand, they're like, it's great that we have this partner. But then on the other hand, people are have that Quebec grudge. But I would rather people just look at the merits of the value and the price and let the data speak for itself. I mean, Quebec's in Canada. They're our neighbor. They're wonderful people. It's an excellent place to visit and live. I don't know. I don't participate in the anti-Quebec rhetoric, and I really hate that does complicate the dialogue around this deal. Absolutely, yeah. Because I don't like it.
This is Party A negotiating with Party B.
100%.
That's kind of it for me. Jeffrey, really appreciate your time this morning. Thanks for doing it.
Always, thanks.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right, let's get a break in. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. For those in the queue, you stay right there for after the news. We're nudging up against the 10 o'clock hour. Got a couple of emails saying, boy, I sure glossed over who's the replacement for Michael Wilson on the oversight panel. All right, and one email went on to say, I have no idea who Guy Holborn is. Me neither. So just to fill us all in, including myself, about who Guy Holborn is and his background. Professor of Business, Economics and Public Policy at the Ivey Business School at the University of Western Ontario, working in corporate governance, regulation, business strategy, published extensively in peer-reviewed journals, authored numerous reports on energy policy. Dr. Holborn founded and directed the Ivey Energy Policy Management Centre. He served as a director of London Hydro, a member of the Alliance for Research on Corporate Sustainability, a member of the Council for Clean and Reliable Energy. Let's see here. He's got a PhD and a master's from the University of California, Berkeley. He's got an honors degree from Cambridge University. He worked with a consulting company called Bain. Isn't that, what's his name? Former governor of Utah. Isn't that his company? Who's the guy I'm thinking of? The tall, handsome billionaire senator. Anyway, it'll come to me. And also for the California Public Utilities Commission. All right, Sarah, let's check in on the Twitter box. We're VOCM Open Line. You know what to do. Follow us there. Email address is openline@vocm.com. When brought up the issue of the contractual arrangement between the regulated childcare operators and the government regarding grants and the funding process and the fact that they feel like they've been muzzled, got some immediate pushback from someone inside the government. I see the name, but I don't know who they are, what department they actually work for. But that at the exact same time, regulated child care operators saying, thank you very much for bringing it up because that is the reality on the ground. And it probably shouldn't be the case. Then a quick mention of a question that I left off with Jerry Earle, the president at NAPE, about the relationship between governments and organized labor. Made four very specific references to the relationship between federally regulated industries, unionized workers, rails, ports, Canada Post, and most recently Air Canada flight attendants. They're referring back to Section 17, which gives the minister unilateral rights to do exactly what's been done, order people back to work and or to order binding arbitration. The question is about just how commonplace it is now and what that means between the relationship of unions, the protection of collective bargaining, and how governments are operating. And I did say, and carved it out, that this is a federally regulated issue, but the provincial conversations are also happening. Think back a couple of years ago in Ontario. There was actually threat of a general strike. And that was, of course, issues between Doug Ford and the province's teachers. They were threatening a general strike. That conversation happening with national unions is absolutely on the front burner. That's why I brought it up. All right, let's get to the news. When we come back, we'll talk to someone running for Torbay Town Council, and then PJ's in the queue to talk about the MOU. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 4. Say good morning to the Executive Director at the St. John's International Women's Film Festival. That's Jen Brown. Hi, Jen. You're on the air.
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
What's going on?
Well, what's not going on?
Fair enough.
No, we are in the peak of our busy season. We're amping up for our big 36th annual festival this October from the 21st to the 25th. So we are locking film programming and industry panels and parties and events and all of that really good stuff. But we also just launched a new initiative. So we have a producers cohort that we just announced yesterday. The festival has been long supporting artists. I mean, that's really core to our mandate, is trying to imagine a gender equitable and artist-centered film industry. And we've been doing that in so many ways, of course. One of the biggest compliments I could ever hear from the film community saying this festival puts its money where its mouth is, and really sees us removing barriers for the community and for artists wherever it's possible, and how to, make this the place to be and the opportunity to come out here, whether you're local filmmakers or visiting. How can we just connect the most brilliant minds together to make good connections and art and, bring productions here and bring new films here and bring new ideas. So this producers program is open to 10 women and gender diverse producers from all over the country. We are covering all their travel, accommodations, per diems, access to the festival, and we're really doing this to strengthen Newfoundland Labrador's film sector by connecting these producers who, are the folks making these businesses happen, along with the writers and directors here, and they need to have either a pre-existing relationship or an emerging relationship with Newfoundland Labrador's screen sector. So we're really excited to see how many people can we get here, which new projects can happen, and we're really excited to see which kind of films this might build and develop for us to be able to screen in the future.
I'm not sure why I know this, but I know they launched the same thing out in Whistler at their film festival. It's an international folks. I believe Ruth Lawrence is actually part of their cohort, their producers cohort.
Yes,
they had a keen focus on.
Now,
Go ahead.
Yeah, the only difference with that is it's quite expensive for the artists themselves to participate in that. So an incredible program that we really looked at what our producers here, like Ruth, is such an excellent example of, wow, you need more training, you need more connection with other producers. Where are you going outside the province to get it? But then also, that came with a very expensive tuition, and it came with a lot of additional fees for travel and getting around and like your food and your badges and all of that stuff. So we are really mimicking what works really well elsewhere, and how can we invest in artists so that we can remove as many of those financial barriers as possible.
Is there any one person who's going to play the role as mentor inside this? Because out of Whistler, I can't remember the fella's name, but he's a Canadian Screen Award nominee, director, producer, writer, this and that. I think his name is Josh someone. Anyway, is there one specific mentor inside this cohort?
Instead, it'll be bigger. So with this, one of the September 22nd, we'll be announcing our full festival lineup, including our full film industry forum lineup. So Festival Week features films, features, short films, docs, animations, and then 5 days of industry panels and artist Q&As, pitch sessions, workshops. So this producers cohort will be part of our film forum, and industry accreditation is actually open now as well. So anyone from outside of the province or locally can apply for that. We've kept it really affordable. We're also offering really high subsidy discounts for local artists, as well as a bunch of free waivers that we're going to offer. So you can request a fee waiver if you're a local artist here. You can even apply for childcare stipends and caregiver stipends. But the producers cohort will be under that umbrella, and it will also work hand in hand. We are bringing all of the film commissioners pretty much from across the country to the festival. We're really leaning in this year to Canada. How do we really foster interprovincial co-productions and projects? We're bringing over all those funders and financiers and decision makers here. The dots. So how do we put directors, writers, and producers together in the same room with all of the funders, broadcasters, streamers, you name it, and let's see what kind of really sincere relationships can be made and projects that can then be initiated by connecting all those dots.
How would the interprovincial issue be complicated by the fact that different provinces have different policies in place, like different tax credits or what have you? We're very attractive because of tax credits, so how does that factor in?
So that's, for Newfoundland Labrador's film industry, about 70% of the money that comes in from interprovincial co-productions is new money that's coming into the province. So extremely important to our sector, which, is about to hit $1 billion of economic activity over the creation of Picture NL, our local film commission. We have an incredibly attractive tax incentives, which is they're absolutely vital to the success of our industry. Different provinces play a little bit differently. I mean, so many of our shows and long-running series here have been Ontario, Newfoundland co-productions. All the provinces and territories work a little bit different, but that's why we're getting all of those folks around the same table, and we're bringing them here. So we're really sincerely bringing the whole film industry here to Newfoundland and Labrador for the festival, because not only is it, for you to be able to say, hey, I want to do something in BC, and with Newfoundland, can I talk to the people face to face to figure out how do I make this work to the best of, make it the most ideal situation for the artists and the producers, of course, and the most lucrative for them to be able to financially, the feasibility there. But then also to see, well, what are the in-betweens of that relationship of, maybe it doesn't quite work with Newfoundland and BC for that particular project, but we have Ontario Creates here as well. Maybe that's a conversation you should have. Really just trying to put all of the cards and the options on the table here for artists, how to empower them with the knowledge, the relationships, and really the ability to feel empowered and have some back and forth of, right, here's what I want. How can I really navigate this system and find the best fit that's going to be a win-win for my project, and, remove as many barriers as possible? Because now more than ever, if we're talking about how do you make those relationships and those business deals happen, if you're a Newfoundland Labrador artist, it means that you're going to have to leave the province unless you're really here for our festival.
Yeah, I mean, the tax credits, which are very lucrative, what that's led to is a professionally trained and experienced TV and film crew. Reasons why people like Disney come to town. So it's had a huge benefit. It's an economic driver. Now you add this purpose-built TV film soundstage that's going to be in Ballina, a $50 million project. That's just another shot in the arm that's going to only lead to good things.
Absolutely, and that's it. Like our festival, we screen work written and directed by women and gender diverse artists, but the St. John's International Women's Film Festival has really served as a film school in this province for over 30 years, and we take that very seriously. And what all the incredible things that's happening here in our province, the new sound stage, like the big productions that are coming here, we want to really figure out, well, what's missing? Who else needs to be in this room? Who else can we introduce to? Last year, our festival brought in Netflix. Netflix doesn't do film festivals. We, really built that relationship, got them to come here, and we extended their itinerary. We created more space and opportunities for them to have producer meetings, one-on-ones, location scouts. After our festival last year, the Untitled Netflix series was announced. So, we know that we have that power of connecting the right people in the right place and the magic that can happen as a result. So we're just continuing building on that, taking the next step further, and looking at, who deserves to be in these rooms and can't get their foot in through the door. Well, we're going to remove as many of those barriers as possible and open up that door wide. And you're going to come here, and we're really excited about what can happen if we really give people those opportunities, and especially focusing back on needing to reinvest in our province and our film industry and all of our artists. The talent and the caliber of storytellers, skilled crews, resources, stages here is absolutely incredible. We just really want to brag about it in a bigger way and get more people here. Once they experience it, once we're on the ground, that's all they need to say, wow, what's in the water here? I want to come back. And now I know all the people who I'm going to work with, who I'm going to hire, how I'm going to get the funding, and why this is really the best business move for me, as well as artistically the best move.
Yeah, we punch above our weight in the world of the arts in every gamut. Jen, I believe you're on your way.
We really do.
We really do. I believe you're on your way to TIFF, so enjoy that, and I appreciate your time this morning.
Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Take care.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Jen Brown, Executive Director at the St. John's International Women's Film Festival. Year 36 coming up. Fantastic. Let's take a break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 3. PJ, you're on the air.
Oh, good morning, Patty.
Good morning.
Good morning. I just wanted to bring you back to Tuesday for a second, if I could. On Tuesday, you had the CEO of Hydro on, and you posed a few questions, which was great. One of the questions was why, in the case of Beta Spear expansion, Hydro is in agreement to do a robust study of that. But in the case of the MOU of Churchill Falls, they're not in agreement to do such a robust study. And surprising, the answer was something that I think is surprising and leads further, some further work on. The response was, well, because Beta Spear has to go in front of the PUB, and Churchill Falls MOU doesn't have to go in front of the PUB.
I mean, technically it has been exempt, but that doesn't mean that that should be the case. I mean, if the law recommendations are clear, and I believe I know who you are, and you've sent me an email on this front, and I read some of it actually live on the air, is if it's a project in excess of $50 million, it requires robust independent review. And I asked the question pretty straightforward. It technically might be accurate what you said, but that doesn't mean it's the best thing.
Yeah, and it's. I think if most people read the review, and he was very blunt in his wording. He said never should they do a project over $50 million. Doesn't matter what the project is. If it's a hospital, a generating station, doesn't matter. I don't think if you contacted him, it might be a valuable exercise for someone in the media to contact him and get his view on his recommendation number one and what he thinks it should be applicable. I think it's precisely the type of project that he envisions that Newfoundland take on a robust review on this. But it's open to determination. He made the recommendation. The Newfoundland government accepted it. And here I believe you could argue it seems to be skirting around that recommendation at the very first opportunity. That seems to be ineffective and a bit mind-boggling, but it appears where we're going. Obviously, like the Premier now is coming out and speaking and trying to defend some of the things on price. But I think on price, and this would come out in a robust review, of course, is that the price that Hydro-Quebec is going to pay for the new electricity out of Gull Island is on a cost-plus rate. It's not the rate that's in the Schedule G. So people need to understand these distinctions. That they'll could end up paying less per kilowatt for this new energy than the old energy, if I can put it that way. So these are things that really need to be, ironed out.
I'm not so sure I understand the concept of paying less than the current price of energy, if that's what you actually said, or maybe I misheard what was said. Because today, Hydro-Quebec is paying 0.2 cents per kilowatt hour at the upper threshold, which is exactly why their revenues have been in the neighborhood of $28 billion, while ours are just short of $2 billion. So did I mishear or misrepresent what you said?
I may have misspoke, but what I'm saying is that the new energy from Gull Island could very well be cheaper than what they have to pay for the energy out of Churchill Falls under the new PPA arrangement, is what I'm saying. You're right. Currently, they get it for nothing. The CEO said, yes, they're getting it free now, which is an amazing thing, but that's the fact. But under the new arrangement for Churchill Falls proper, the legacy plant, they're going to pay on average 6 cents over the period. But the rate out of Gull Island could very much be less than that because they're amortizing it over 65 years. So the expense is going to be for the rate for the electricity for the new, I call it new electricity out of Gull Island and out of Churchill Falls number 2 is going to be on a cost plus basis. It's not the rate that's in Schedule G. So those are the things that are really in here that the government and Hydro are not forthcoming with, and that's just one of them. There's a host of things in here. I mean, how many people in Newfoundland realize that this is really a 65-year agreement again? Because the 50-year clock does not commence until Churchill Falls number 2 generating station is functioning. Well, folks, that's 12 to 15 years from today. So that's when the 50-year clock starts. So we're precisely in another 65-year agreement. And there's a host of issues within that MOU about how much control Hydro-Quebec has over the projects. Newfoundland is not involved in the critical decision-making path for these projects at Gull Island or at Churchill Falls number 2. They're not there.
Yeah.
They're at the table, but they don't have much of a vote in anything. They have no veto vote. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm not so sure about when the clock starts, but I'm certainly not sure about how much control. Look, people point to that specific issue all the time, and I get it, and I understand why they do it. But if we are not funding any of the construction, assuming any of the liabilities at Gull, how much say could we actually pragmatically have? It's similar in the oil business, right? We'll take a 10% equity stake in one oil field or another, which means we have a seat at the table with zero say. So I'll make that analogy because that's how it works in the oil industry. But if we're not assuming any of the risk or any of the cost at Gull, what sort of control could we expect?
Well, I mean, this is a matter of interpretation, how much risk there is. I mean, you look at risk. there's all kinds of risks in this industry, and I'll speak with Amira in a second because it affects the LIL. But I mean, the 50-year clock starts after the functioning of Churchill Falls Generation Number 2. It's in the MOU. It's there. It's one of the easiest things in the MOU to take out from it. It's there. It's a 65-year agreement, and they're going to amortize any of the costs for these projects over 65 years as well. So that's in the MOU now.
Oh, I know what the MOU says, but my comment was I don't know how long it's going to take for proposed expansion at the Upper Churchill. So whether it's 8, 10, 12, 14, 15, 16 years, I don't know. That's what I meant.
Well, they have the dates in the MOU with the proposed dates. They talk about 10 years, but 10 years from now, we're already basically in 2026, and this is, so we're talking definitely 12 years, which brings us very close to, the 2041 mark. Not that that's, but it just gives you an appreciation how long these things take to get built. But that is when the 50-year clock starts. So, people need to understand that. And I don't think the people are being presented with the facts around this because no robust study, none of the facts. It hasn't been dumbed down. I was in business doing this for government and in my career, and part of my job was to dumb this down for the executives. So I would take an MOU like this and have to dumb it down paragraph by paragraph so that the executives could understand it. Because as sure as they're sitting in those positions in executives and all companies, they can't understand this stuff, same as a lot of people can't. So that has to be dumbed down. They're not dumbing it down for people in Newfoundland. They're just trying to rush it through. And I mean, look at Mr. Wilson. He resigned 4 months ago. Did not come out and express to government that we're going to find somebody else. And I mean, when you look at the terms of reference for that panel, I mean, the government is vetting all the candidates, and they present the names to Mr. Brown, and he picks the one. So, I mean, the process around that, and I mean, we don't need to speak on that much further, but, I mean, Mr. Wilson's basically said, obviously he's under non-disclosure, but basically what he's saying is that, it's just not the task that, people expect from that panel. And here's the envision, and I'll just move on to Amira, is that I envision this MOU, people can envision this like a garbage bag. And this process, this panel is going to do, they're going to take the contents of that garbage bag and put it in 12 other garbage bags, but they're going to be darker and you're not going to be able to see through them as easily. So there's really a need to, get a robust study. And people, I think, in Newfoundland need to really, show some initiative on that and try to get more people involved to understand and put the pressure on the government to go for a robust study.
Okay. Before we run out of time, though, PJ, can we get to your implication regarding Amira and the LIL? I'm interested in hear what you have to say.
Yeah. So Amira, of course, was involved with the Muskrat Falls, and they had a stake in the LIL, but they sold that stake last year to an investment company. And, so they've divested themselves of that stake it's in the public domain. It's $1 billion plus this company took on some other commitments. But, this is a case here with Amira, which is a private company in Nova Scotia, as you know, and they're comparable to Hydro in Newfoundland for people that may not understand that. But they divested their risk out of the LIL. That's essentially what they've done here. They've now have that an investment company owns that portion of the value, which, from what I can gather, Hydro pays quarterly payments to now, and Amira has washed their hands of maybe not 100%, but certainly the majority of the risk now they've removed themselves for, because they're a private company, and their shareholders would look at the LIL and say that's a high risk. We have to deal with it. They dealt with it. They dealt with it last year, and they're no longer. They own the Maritime Link, of course, but the LIL part, they're not invested in it as much now.
Yeah, I think that's the right way to put it. I don't think they gave up 100% of their equity piece in that, but you are right. It has been divested in part to some sort of hedge fund company or private equity firm or whatever the right phrase is. PJ, anything else before I have to say goodbye and move on, sir?
Well, I mean, I think we need to understand the strategies of Quebec Hydro in this. Like, their main strategy is to learn about how to become a world leader in small hydropower station construction, development, whatever you put it. And that's precisely, I think, what they're up to with the Churchill Falls No. 2 plant. It's not an expansion. I think they call it that in Newfoundland, but in Quebec they call it CF2, Churchill Falls No. 2. And that's a separate plant. And the question remains, is the investment in that, the value of that for 1,000 megawatts, really a best business scenario? It's questionable when you look at the output of potential output of Gull Island. So these are the questions that could come out of a robust review. But the thing about it, they want to be leaders in that kind of construction, and they have full control over that project. They're not sharing the IP, the plans, nothing with Newfoundland Hydro. It's all in the MOU. So these are a strange relationship to get involved with. And so, I mean, the last point is that, Hydro Quebec, I think one of their main objectives is to get electricity to New York City. That's what they're doing. It's in their objectives, and they will do it. They will do it at any cost, and whether the federal government helps subsidize it, but they will do it because they see it as a very lucrative market.
Sure. I mean, they've got huge domestic demands too for power. They've turned down a bunch of commercial and industrial applications in the last 5 years and the reason is always the same. They don't have the power. So yeah, I mean, getting it to the market that'll pay the most money for it is also that cost-benefit analysis of how much is the benefit domestically if and when there are things like, and I know they've had some problems in the recent past, like Northvolt has gone by the wayside and things, but, job creation, expanded tax base for domestic use of power versus straight up revenue for Hydro-Quebec, selling, whether it be in Connecticut or New England or New York itself. I appreciate the time, PJ. Enjoyed the chat.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks. All the best. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right. Let's get to the break. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 2. Good morning, Paul Toomey. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you this morning?
Not too bad. Is that a good phone line, Dave? Oh, boy. I'll put Paul on hold. We'll figure that out. Let's go to line number 1. Say good morning to the PC member for Topsoil Paradise, opposition critic for education, children and youth services. That's Paul Dinn. Paul, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Thanks for taking my call.
No problem.
I just sent you some information on the topic you raised in your preamble, and that was around the letter that's now I've received and I think is being circulated to media on childcare, and particularly from operators that are afraid to speak up or can't speak up because of clauses that they signed, non-disclosure clauses within their agreements for the operating grant. And as you know, I've had a couple of town halls over the years, last June and this June, and communication has been a huge piece. Lack of communication has been a huge piece when it comes to these, child care centers and operators who are trying to open new facilities and increase, the spaces and that for those out there that need it, and are being met with, just a stop order, so to speak, where they just can't get any more progress or any response from government, and they've had crossed their T's and dotted their I's and are ready to go. But yet they can't speak up on that. They just have to wait and wait and wait. And right now, I mean, if you're dealing with childcare and trying to make a better program out there and deal with issues, then you really need to have that discussion with the childcare operators.
To what end? Because, look, I get the concept of being silenced or muzzled just because you have to play nice to get access to an operating grant. But, communication with families, to what end? Because for me, it really does kind of feel like a relationship between the operator and the government. And families don't really know exactly what's going on that front. They just want the care to be appropriate and happy and healthy and dignified for their children. So communication with the families, to what end?
Well, with the families, I mean, what I've heard over the last couple of months, I've heard from a lot of operators who can't get approved, can't get offered the sign up for the operating grant program, which provides a $10 a day daycare, and it's the operators that are dealing with the parents, and they can't speak up and say, well, we're waiting on this from government, or government hasn't done that. They're taking the brunt of this. But at the end of the day, if you've got childcare operators that are ready and willing and ready to go and can't get responses from government, then that falls back on less spaces and less accessibility for parents. I mean, that's the issue. But I mean, what I'm reading, and with the letter that came the other day, looking at, like, operators cannot say that. They cannot say what the issue is, and they cannot get answers from government on this. Some of the operators are suggesting that the budget has been exhausted, and yet they can't get anything on that. It's just disturbing when you hear the stories of these operators, and it's across the province, that have done everything, have brand new buildings, some of them, and cannot get any further progress on offering the $10 a day daycare.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I get that communication with the prospective families if we're trying to get a new facility off the ground. My thoughts were on any issues regarding communication between the government and the operator regarding operating the grants, the operating funds. That's what I was referring to, because, like, if I'm the parent of the 3-year-old at Apples and Acorns, I only care about, $10 a day and all the working machinations between the operator and the government. That's not really my concern. My concern is a healthy spot for my child to be looked after and to be taught, I should also add.
No, that's exactly right. And what I've seen happen, I've heard, when school got out, there's some operators that were funded and offered the operating grant through the school year, but when it came to the summer program, they couldn't get it, which makes no sense. It's the same facility, same operator. So they're figuring it had something to do with budget. I don't know, because no one's been told that. But here we are. We hear the releases on so many positions created or spaces created. But from what I'm hearing, there's an opportunity that should have created many, many more spaces. And we're not seeing or hearing it, and we're not hearing why that's not so. And when the minister spoke on this, or had the press release a couple of weeks back, people asked about, well, how many are on the wait list, on the gateway? And I mean, when you're making a release on childcare, you should know that. The minister at the time didn't know that. I know it's somewhere around 9,000-10,000 people, and there's issues around that. But these are the concerns that need to be addressed. And if it's at that amount of people, then we certainly need to have more spaces. And if there's childcare centres out there that are ready to operate and have done everything that's been asked of them, my question becomes well, why are they not being open? Why are they not being assigned the contracts? And from what I'm hearing, there's many in that position, but they cannot speak out, because if they speak out, they're fearful of either being written up or their facility being visited and delayed even more. It's not right.
No, it isn't right. While we have you, I'm just going to read this, and this is from an operator who wants to remain anonymous for the obvious reasons. I'd love to come on the show, but I know that as an owner-operator, there'd be serious repercussion from the department. I didn't hear your preamble, but I had a phone call from a concerned citizen that I know very well. This person, I don't know if it's a he or she, I would like to confirm that gag orders, operators, licensees, and administrators are not allowed to speak out. When you signed the operating grant program for $10 a day, there's an NDA disclosure in that. We cannot even as much as take these contracts to a lawyer or financial officer to review before we sign it. Oftentimes, we are given no more than 48 hours to review these contracts before they have to be signed and returned. Not only are we being gagged, but there are horror stories of centres across the island and in Labrador who are trying to expand and increase childcare, and they cannot get any answers from the department. This is both for not-for-profit and for-profit sector. Owner-operators in the childcare field right now, everyone's hands are tied at the expense of the Liberal government and the Department of Early Learning. Most of these announcements they have been making all summer have been projects that have been ongoing since 2023. It's time for the public to know that the department is failing the public with childcare. From an operator.
Well, I can't argue that, because in the town halls I've had, that's been the common thought. And going forward, there was the thought that a couple of operators were to the end of their line for them, and they were going to go public. But I guess, in an afterthought, and that's what I was waiting on, because nothing pushes the envelope more than hearing from the real people with the real lived experiences. But now they've come down and they said, no, we got to get this out there. And hence there was a letter circulated yesterday. I haven't seen the one you just referenced, but it's you're hearing from so many, I can't, and from across the province, like they say, where there's smoke, there's fire. And this is unreal what's happening here when accessible childcare is something that's been boasted about and something we need. There's no doubt about it. But if at least for government to come clean on this and just say, oh, well, we run out of funding, or tell us what the plan is. Because I know in talking to the group ABCs and ECs, I mean, they're telling us that the contract that's been signed by the province in Canada on this grant, they're telling us that Newfoundland is way behind on their targets in terms of coverage. So we need to see the real picture here. We need to open the communications lines where no one's fearful of ramifications, and focus on the children. It's the children at the end of this who are suffering, and the parents who cannot get their children into affordable and accessible childcare. That's the bottom line.
Two obvious questions. Let's just say the Tories are successful and you become the minister responsible as opposed to the opposition critic. Would you remove every single restriction and these gag orders from the operators of these regulated childcare facilities? They can say what they want, when they want, to who they want.
I think communication is key.
But answer the question, though. Would you remove all of the restrictions that you're complaining about today?
We'd certainly have to look at it. I would remove them. I mean, what's in there, the 7.1 and the 7.2 in the agreement, I mean, that is a gag order. But the other piece on this, too, Patty, is childcare operators cannot contact the department. They have to go to a email address. So those simple communication lines are not open. You want to have a working relationship with those out there who are offering the childcare. You have to have a working relationship with them. What's there now is not creating that working relationship. And people who know me, I will create a working relationship with them to ensure that we're hearing from them what's working, what's not working. How do you improve a system if you put a gag order on them?
Also, if you were successful, when we hear announcements about the numbers of childcare spaces created, what we don't get is a net number. We're not told how many have been lost or how many are on the sidelines waiting for government approval. Would that be all those three components be part of announcements if and when you were the minister?
That's the full picture. You have to be open and transparent and present that full picture. Hence why I mentioned the gateway that they have and the 9,000 that are on that. And incidentally, that 9,000, you don't know if they got the child care and removed themselves from the list or not. The whole piece of being open and transparent is the way to deal with the issue. You can't give partial answers on what's happening. There's a full equation involved in this. It's what you create, and we've seen it the same with healthcare. We've seen the same with healthcare. You bring in so many healthcare professionals. Okay, but how many have left? Right? How many are gone this way? How many are not actually in the field but are teaching? That's the data that needs to be out there, and it's only if you put it out there you're going to hear back from those with lived experiences that will tell you some solutions. I mean, it's you got to work together on this, and you got to have the full information.
Absolutely, 100%. I got to get to the break, Paul, but I appreciate the time.
Look, thanks for taking the call, Patty.
Pleasure.
Appreciate it.
All the best. Bye-bye.
All the best.
All right, let's take a break. When we get back, see if we have a better phone line to talk with Paul Toomey. He wants to make his announcement as a candidate down Tarbay. And then whatever you want to talk about, don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 3. Paul Toomey, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. Thanks for taking my call, and hopefully you've got a better line right now.
Better line now.
Great. Excellent. Kind of stole my thunder just before you went to break that time. Yeah, I am calling this morning to announce that I'm going to take a run at municipal politics. I'm going to run for a councillor position in the town of Torbay, a place where I've lived for the last 44 years and watched my family grow, and I've watched the town grow over that period of time as well. And I think the time has come for me to give it a shot to try to continue to help that growth in the town and see us continue to grow and deal with some of the major issues that are going to be facing the town in the coming years.
Growth is a fascinating issue when you talk about municipalities. Like, we'll hear boast about Paradise and Conception Bay South, and I get, it's a lot to be proud of, but growth has to be carefully managed, if not micromanaged, because it can create problems at the same time as it creates economic opportunity, for instance.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Patty. And for example, in Torbay, one of the major issues right now is water. The ability to develop land that is available, but as you said, to develop it properly. We don't have enough water in Torbay. We have some opportunities to develop new water sources, and there are a bunch of things that need to be looked at. The federal government has just recently announced a major contribution, but unfortunately that major contribution still leaves the town looking at $9-10 million to be able to pull off the project. And for a smaller town of 8,000 people, a $9 million debt is a challenge that needs to be very, very properly managed if we're going to move ahead. I'm really interested in seeing economic growth, but again, not at the risk of putting the town into debt. So I'd like to be a part of that for the next 4 years. I think the current mayor, Craig Scott, I've watched him for the past 8 years, has done a very, very good job of leading the town. He's been available, he's been open to people, and I'd love to have the opportunity to work with him as we go forward to solve those problems, but also to maintain Torbay as a safe place, with access to services that meet the needs of all our residents, and that includes housing, recreation, you name it. And I'm up for the challenge, and I want to give it a try. Yeah,
you mentioned water, and I'm always reminded of the well water poisoning down in Torbay as well with the forever chemicals. I know that's as much a federal issue for insofar as solutions to be found, because it's a federal problem. They caused it with the airport is, of course, in Torbay, but airports are federally regulated, and those firefighting exercises are the responsibility of the federal government. Anyway, I'll put that out there. Insofar as housing and stuff goes, where do you start? Because, there can indeed be land available or made available, but not everything has to be a single detached family home like a 1,200 square foot bungalow. In your mind, are there room for other types of development? Like we're talking about building up, not out here in St. John's, which I think is mandatory. Then it's the concept of tiny homes and modular homes and 4 apartment units, those types of things. Where's your head on housing? My head's right where you're basically saying right now. My wife and I are good examples. We live in a fairly large house in Torbay right now with a significant amount of land. When we built it 10 years ago, we were 10 years younger, and it was a great spot. Loved to do all the gardening, loved to do all the maintenance in the house. But we're reaching the stage where, whether we want to or whether we don't want to, we need to downsize. But we very definitely want to stay in Torbay. And that's just the thing, but there's nowhere there. There's nothing in the way of good senior living, and I think there's some developments on the horizon, and that's one of the things I would like to see. The opportunity for multi-unit buildings, I think, has got to be explored. But again, a lot of it comes back to the water. Some great projects out there right now, but unfortunately, the big question mark is there enough water to support them, and what impact will it have on the neighbors in the area? And that's something I think that has to be clearly considered. So, yeah, different types of housing is very important, and I'm fully supportive of moving in that direction. Yeah, like back when there was, I think it was Puchkov at the time, they were denying an application for someone to build a tiny home. And some of the neighbours or the residents were saying, it's going to decrease my property value and what have you. Now times and tunes have changed. And municipalities, especially, I'll say smaller communities than, for instance, St. John's, those types of municipalities, if they fully latch onto and buy into tiny home, modular home, and actually create some of these subdivisions that would be exactly that, shared service and whatnot, they're going to see people move in. Absolutely, and I think that benefits the whole region, and I think that's the way we have to think in Torbay as well. What can we do that's going to benefit the entire region? I mean, you mentioned earlier on your show this morning about a development of a film studio down in the town of Balleen, which you have to go right by my house to get to Balleen. So I think about the opportunities that presents for our town and region as a whole in terms of restaurants, in terms of the stores, you name it. I mean, it's going to bring more people to the area. The tourism opportunity that we have in Torbay with the History House and expanding that to have more of the great history of Torbay and to talk about what's happened in the community is so important, needs to be preserved, needs to be shown to attract more people to the area as well. And Torbay Road itself, once you leave the intersection of Stavanger Drive and Torbay Road, becomes a racetrack. And I know that's not necessarily a municipal issue, so to speak, but it is noticeable. It's like you just changed into a different jurisdiction. You go past the Vanguard Drive and look out, because I know it's so wide that it, just invites people to be heavy with the loud pedal. Anyway, I appreciate the time. Good luck out there, Paul.
Patty, thanks very much for your time, and just say to the citizens of Torbay, those who know who I am, and me from probably hearing me on radio quite a bit as well, I'd appreciate your support on October the 2nd.
Thanks, Paul. All the best.
Thanks, Patty.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, Ronald Drew, he's where the VOWR has been for a long time. We're going to help him promote a concert coming up to benefit VOWR. Caller in the queue wants to talk about the MOU, and Geneva wants to talk about water quality up the shore. Don't go away.
You're listening to a rebroadcast of VOCM Open Line. Have your say by calling 709-273-5211 or 1-888-590-8626 and listen live weekday mornings at 9 a.m.
Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 6. Geneva, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. It's Geneva. This is the first time I've ever done this, but I'm at my wit's end. I don't know what to do.
What's happening?
August the 9th, we had a water problem in Bay Bulls. I live in Bay Bulls, and it's 14 units here. The pump or the water went, don't know. Anyway, didn't have no water. The landlord got a truck come in, and the truck carries water, sewer, and gas. August 9th, that Saturday morning, I got up 9:30, take my pills, I put my mouth under the tap, and swallowed gas. The truck had gas previously in that truck, and now it's contaminated the whole units. It's been ongoing. I took a sample down to the old general. They only checked for E. coli and something else, not gas. They told me to go to Higgins Line. I went to Higgins Line. They don't do gas. I would have to do Canada Environment. So I contacted them, but I would have to get a sample. It would have to be really fast because gas evaporates or something. And it will cost me $200 to get that sample. So I contacted Environment Consultants. They give me a number. But I don't know what to do. I've been phoning my landlord, telling him we're running out of water. He's bringing in water once a day. He's filling up the tank. Now, first when we had a drought or problems with it, and he brought the truck in. It was the same truck that contaminated water. He brought the truck in. It kept this going. Then he changed that and got a container. It used to be filled twice a day. We didn't run out of water. Then he went and changed that to once a day. Sent out notice, and now I've got an eviction notice. Let's give him 5 days. He extended to a month. And now we're running out of water because he's not keeping it twice a day. It would be able to sustain us. There's 14 units here. And he's only doing it once a day and giving us one case per week of bottled water. I called Monday, said I'm running out of bottled water because we ran out of water and I got to use the bottled water for drinking and cooking. When I was talking to the consultant yesterday, that he said, do not use the water. I said, what about a shower? No. He said, flush only. I was talking to the landlord's grandfather, told him about the gas. They don't believe it. He said, make sure you stand outside for the explosion. Really, don't you care? I cried to the landlord on Monday. Please, give us, just fill it up twice a day so we can have water. I can wake up in the morning and be able to flush twice. I can't go out in my backyard and have to use the bathroom because I'd be charged. Years ago I could, no problem. Now I can't. And who wants that stink in the bathroom?
Yeah, fair enough.
I don't.
So, for starters, the landlord in this not believing stuff, This is a silly place to start. Look, so is the thought that you need to get this sample tested to prove that there's liability, whether it be the company that injected the gas and or for the landlord to rectify it on his or her dime?
Right.
Okay.
And I went to the Tenants Association, given my filled out the repair report, given that, he still ignored it. He gave me eviction, went to the Tenants Association, they give me some documents. I can't even read it unless I'm a lawyer. I don't even know the meaning of some of the words. So all I'm doing is just getting my head hit and hit. Like, I can't take it no more. I don't know what to do. This is bigger than what I am.
Geneva, I can probably help you get it tested.
Okay.
So there's a couple of laboratories that I'm familiar with. One is close by Churchill Park, and it's called Bureau Veritas. And they are environmental services laboratory. And I think they have a wide suite, a comprehensive suite of testing that they can do. There's another lab here in town. I can't remember where it is, but it's AGAT, A-G-A-T, AGAT Laboratories.
Okay.
So call two of those outfits and see if they can do the test that you need done. Because if you are armed with proof of the gas being present in the water, then there's going to be very little wiggle room available to either the company that pumped it in and or the landlord of the facility itself. So call those two. I don't have the telephone numbers off the top of my head, but just a very quick Google search of both, you'll get a phone number right away. So give that a shot.
No, I've got an old flip phone. I'm not high tech.
Okay, hold on. I'll get your number. I'll get your number. Hold on.
But now, yesterday I went and washed, and you can smell gas in my washer.
I believe it. Okay, let's see here. Okay, you got a pen and paper?
Yes, my love.
Bureau Veritas, the number is 754
754
0203.
0203.
AGAT is 726
726
9345.
9345.
Yeah.
Oh, my love, thank you so much. So much. Because, I mean, I can't afford $200. Consultant said it probably costs around $200. I shouldn't be doing this. The landlord should be doing all this.
Yeah, I agree. So let me know how you make out.
I definitely will.
Okay.
Love.
Good luck, Geneva.
Thank you tremendously.
My pleasure. Take care.
Have a nice day.
You
Bye-bye.
too. Bye-bye. Yeah, that's ridiculous. Let's keep going. Let's go to line number 4. Good morning, Ron LeDrew. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty, and thank you for taking my call. It's a little over a year now since we celebrated 100 years at VOWR Radio, and we had a big concert back in July of last year, and it went over very, very well. It's a great fundraiser, and we have another one on schedule now, and it's coming up next Saturday, which is not this Saturday coming, but the following Saturday, September 13th at Holy Heart. It's a celebration of the 70s. It's going to be a great concert for concert goers in St. John's and area. So we're hoping for some great support there. It's a big fundraiser for us. As you know, we're all total volunteer down at the station. And so we look forward to getting our tickets sold for that concert.
Tell us a bit more about it. Someone sent me a note regarding the concert yesterday. I gave it a little pump of the tires, but you'll go ahead and give it another one, Ron.
Well, I tell you, we have a fine lineup of musicians: Mick Davis, Jackie Sullivan, and Carol Pilgrim, Justin Fancy, Peter Halley, Brothers of Stereo, Dana Parsons. We have Kelsey Arsenault, Michael Bursey, David Chape, and Annabeth Lovies from Wesley United Church, as well as Krista Chaplin. And we have the cast of Arts and Aging. They are a group that go out to our seniors' homes, and they present a play with regard to what goes on inside the doors of VOWR, and it's very interesting. And they're going to be on stage with a couple of skits, and it's going to be pretty interesting for the people that are in attendance at the concert, because there's a lot of things go on behind the scenes down at radio station VOWR, especially the telephone calls that we receive and the nice emails and letters.
And you have a pretty lovely host, too, Patrina Bromley, of course, from Broadway fame. And just, to give you a little additional shout-out for some of the performers, Brothers in Stereo, your two sons and your nephew. And then, of course, the house band includes your son, Chris, Paul Kinsman, Boomer Stamp, Sandy Morris, Glenn Parsons, Joe Tompkins. So it's a pretty all-star lineup.
It's a great lineup, and all of these musicians, as you know, they're seasoned in the province and do very well on stage. And so we're looking forward to this big concert. And I thank you, Patty, for taking the time. I know you have a lot of important calls coming in there. And so I just wanted to pass on the word. Tickets are available at Holy Heart Theatre out there in Bonaventure Avenue. The box office is open now daily, I think, from Tuesday to Saturday at 12 noon. So we look forward to seeing you, the listening audience, out on September 13th. It's on a Saturday night.
Yes, sir. It begins at 8 p.m. The box office telephone number, if you need it, is 709-579-4424. And the website's an easy one, holyhearttheatre.com. Good luck with it, Ron.
Thank you, Patty, for the call.
My pleasure, sir. Stay in touch.
Bye now.
All right, bye-bye. Ron LeDrew with VOWR. That sounds like a great night out. Let's see here. Let's take a break. When we come back, we're going to speak with a candidate who sees their election signs being removed. Don't go away. Welcome back to the show. Let's go to line number 6. Say good morning to Wendy Squires-Ennis, running for council down in Torbay. Wendy, you're on the air.
Oh, hi, Patty. Thank you. It's actually Portugal Cove, St. Phillips.
Pardon me, Portugal Cove, St. Phillips.
Thank you. So we put up signs all weekend, and I believe it might have been Monday evening or overnight Monday, in the early morning, that 20 of my signs were taken. It was very disheartening, but, it didn't get me down, maybe for a little bit, for a minute. But now I'm pushing even forward to, fight through this, and I don't know who it is, might never know. Don't know what they have against me, but here I am. Yeah, I'm going to run for council and try to speak up for people. You will remember that it was me who spoke up against bus stop safety, or about bus stop safety.
Oh, yeah, fair enough. Wendy, so you seriously have no inkling as to who might be behind this?
No. I would only hope it's not anything to do with the actual candidates, maybe a supporter of theirs, maybe somebody totally random that has a beef with me. I don't know of any that I have myself, because other signs were not taken. It was only mine. Now, I do understand that it does happen sometimes at elections, maybe a full row taken or 4 or 5 of somebody's, but 20. Patty, that was a lot of work for somebody to do that. They had to have had, a pickup with a driver and a passenger to toss them in and go fast, or do it under the cover of darkness. Even when we put them out, it took us 2 different sittings, 2 different days to put them out and in and out of the car. So a lot of work. More than one person did this, I'd say.
Probably. And I mean, even if someone has some sort of beef with you, to use your word, it's such a juvenile way to go about it. Just go around taking down election signs. I don't know how people have that much time on their hands to devote it to something as foolish as that.
Right. In the meantime, thanks to the wonderful support of our community, somebody did find them tossed in the trees near a pond, trailway, and they called me, messaged me. So they have been recovered, and over the coming days, they will be put back. So that person or people did not get me down. It's only making me push stronger to go ahead.
So just for clarification, someone got in touch with you and told you where the signs were? Is that what you just said?
They found them when they were walking their dog or with their children, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, they were on the side of and covered up with boughs in the trees.
Again, I wish I had that kind of time on my hands.
I know. So thanks to the people, maybe we cried out a lot on Facebook about it, and maybe people were more aware, but the signs are pink, so they were very visible in the trees for him walking by. And I was so relieved to get those back, and we will put them out shortly.
Okay, now that we have the election signs are one thing, and I'm sorry it happened, but I'm glad you have it back. You give us a top of your list priority if you are lucky enough to be voted in as a councillor.
Well, Patty, I am new, so I have a lot to learn, and my willingness to learn is there. I don't have a platform per se because I want the people to tell me what my platform is. I want to hear their issues so that I can speak on their behalf. I do certainly have main topics like, transparency and accountability of things that have gone by, in the council. I do want to be a voice for people, and I will get back to them and let them know if we're working on something together. I will update them and not leave them hanging. So if it's something I can't do, I will let them know. I will pass them on to the appropriate people and keep them up to date. I don't have an agenda of my own like many in the past. Whatever the case may be, there's nothing that I'm trying to accomplish for myself personally. So, and I want to dig in further to anything like that is going on with any sort of conflict of interest. Dig into some of the finances and, just be there as an honest person where the people can use me to get to council and have their voice heard.
Well, and that's a good thing. We hear complaints about elected officials, whether it be at the municipal, provincial or federal level. They get in office and all of a sudden they are impossible to connect with. And that's the furthest thing from a good thing. I appreciate the time, Wendy. Good luck with it out there.
Thank you. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
All right, Dave, so where am I going here? Line number one, or do you want me to get to the news? Line number one? Sure. Let's go to line one. Caller, you're on the air.
Hi, Patty. How are you this morning?
Great today. How about you?
Good. Patty, I called you there a while ago on the MOU and the power purchase agreement. And basically I was talking about the power purchase agreement saying that Hydro-Quebec would pay 6 cents for the power, but the Newfoundland would only get 4 cents of that 6 cents. And at the time, you seemed kind of skeptical about what I was saying. And you indicated that you were going to check it out. So I was wondering if you did.
Yeah, the response I got is that the pathway to 5.9 cents is exactly that.
In the MOU. The MOU says that Hydro-Quebec will pay 6 cents for the power.
Mm-hmm.
Newfoundland would only get 4 cents for that.
And where do you see that number?
Yeah. And it's outside the MOU. It's not in the MOU. It's because of the way Churchill Falls is structured. Churchill Falls is owned by CFLCO. And CFLCO only has 2 shareholders. Hydro-Quebec owns 1/3, and Newfoundland Hydro owns 2/3.
Mm-hmm.
And CFLCO pays out all of its profits to its 2 shareholders. Hydro-Quebec owns 1/3, so they get 1/3 of the profits. And Hydro-Quebec, Newfoundland Hydro owns 2/3, so they get 2/3 of the profit. So when Hydro-Quebec pays CFLCO 6 cents the power, that's all profit to CFLCO. So then CFLCO turns around and pays out that profit to its 2 shareholders. So Hydro-Quebec gets 1/3 of the 6 cents, which is 2 cents.
To use that logic would say that the 0.2 cents that Hydro-Quebec pays today, we actually only get 2/3 of it, which is just not the case. So the pathway to 5.9 is that. Now I see people throwing around 2.5 and a variety of other numbers that I can't find anywhere. Like I don't know where they come up with it. But I asked this very specific question, and the 5.9 cents is indeed 5.9 cents, and the pathway to it. It's not immediate, but that's the pathway. Yeah, and it does come to 5.9 cents, not 2/3 of it.
It's the 2/3 and the 1/3 is not in the MOU. There's nothing in the MOU about this.
The equity stake is well understood, and the equity stake doesn't change. It'll be the same equity stake at Gull, and in 2041, the equity stake will remain exactly the same. It's simply an opportunity to renegotiate price.
Yes, but if Hydro-Quebec pays CFLCO 6 cents for the power, and CFLCO pays out its profits, that's all profit to CFLCO. That's 6 cents, because there's no cost. So CFLCO then turns around and pays out its profits to its 2 shareholders. Hydro-Quebec gets 2 cents back because they own 1/3 of CFLCO.
I heard what you said.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Quebec and Hydro-Quebec and Michael Savia are saying that they're getting the power for 4 cents.
I haven't seen Michael Sabia say that.
I know there's a lot of bluster from politicians in that, but I don't think that all of them would be that bold to say that because even though they're paying 6 cents for the power, it's only costing them 4 cents. And that's why it's only costing them 4 cents. Is because Hydro-Quebec, basically what happens is Hydro-Quebec pays CFLCO.
Yeah, I've already heard you say that. Yeah.
It gets 2 cents back. So it only costs them 4 cents, and Newfoundland gets 4 cents. And if I'm totally out to lunch, then I wish somebody would tell me, but I can't figure out any other way this would work.
I asked the very specific question that you referenced last time and today, and I just told you what I was told. I don't have much more to offer.
So you don't know how Churchill Falls works?
I do.
So do you know that...
You're not going to say it again, are you?
1/3? Okay, thanks for your time.
No problem. All the best. All right, let's get a break for the news. When we come back, we're speaking with you.
The Tim Powers Show. Join the conversation weekday afternoons at 4 p.m. on your VOCM.
Welcome back to the program. Let's go to line number 2. Say good morning to Ivy Hanley, running for the mayor of the city of St. John's. Joins us on line number 2. Good morning, Ivy. You're on the air.
Good morning, Patty. How are you?
Doing great. How about you?
Great. I thought I would call in because I wanted to talk about approval rates of residential units today, but I also wanted to, it's the first time actually calling in since I announced my campaign. So,
welcome to the program. Where do you want to start with the housing approvals?
Well, what I wanted to talk about is it has to do with misleading the market and the public. And what it is I'm very interested in development and residential units because we are in a housing crisis. We're short on houses and dwelling units. So, when I follow a lot of the other candidates as well as sitting councillors and mayors and deputy mayors because I want to see what's happening in our city. I'm very interested in it. And I noticed they posted that over 2,000 new housing units in 2024 alone have been approved by the city of St. John's. And I was excited. 2,000 new housing units being approved last year is a massive number. But I was shocked because I can't see that happening in our city, in my, around me. Now, I know approvals doesn't equal builds, but still, I thought that number was pretty high. So I did a bit of digging and I ATIP'd it. And what I was provided with was not 2,000 new housing units. It was 586. So my concerns are really with the credibility of our council, and what they're putting out there and the control of what we're putting out there with the numbers, because I can't find the 1,400 plus other units that were approved through my ATIP.
Just a quick question, because I don't have the ATIP in front of me. So when there's an approval that goes out the door, is it recorded as the number of units? Like if I approve a subdivision of 25 single detached homes and it's 25 units. If I approve an apartment building of 60 units, does it get reported as 60 units or it gets reported as one housing approval?
Well, and that's kind of, I was on your wavelengths when I went through all the council meetings from 2024, and that's why I decided to ATIP it, because I couldn't get close to 2,000 thinking maybe it's a bunch of apartment buildings and I don't see the numbers. But in my ATIP, I was very clear asking for housing units approved, including how many units in each building. And I was actually able to see in my ATIP, I can send it to anyone who wants it if they email info@ivyhanley.com. You can very clearly see how many units are in each approval. And, of those 586 I was provided by with the ATIP, 111 of those were change of occupancy or renovations. Only 475 were actually new construction permits. So, I'm still trying to find the other 1,400 plus. I'm sure there has to be something somewhere of it. But what I wanted to call about, obviously the fact that we're running an election, But, how can this be fixed, Patty? How can we make sure that the information being given by council members and being shared by our mayor on their social media feeds is correct? And I really think that that needs to be looked at in a management perspective at the city. We need to control the information coming out, and if they are going to give information, they need to back it up. You can't just give numbers like over 2,000 have been approved, but your ATIP program is not providing that.
Fair enough. I mean, I try to lean in on the most accurate information I can put my hands on. I didn't take the time or opportunity to ATIP this particular stuff, but I very quickly pressed my cough button to send you an email requesting that you send me that document so I can have a look at it and speak to it as well.
Yeah, that would be excellent because, there is a way to fix this problem. I'm not looking to point fingers. I'm looking to manage, and I'm a business owner. I've opened multiple businesses in my life, and I absolutely love management and control and accountability. It's one thing I've run my whole life on. And there is a way to fix this problem if this information is correct. And right now, I have to say, with the information I've been given, I will send it to you through the ATIP. It is incorrect. But, if we had things like public housing dashboard as part of the online permitting system, I know they're trying to get one done. It says they're 2.5 years out of doing this with the development fund that they were given by the feds. But, is that going to show approval starts and completion counts so that the public can know? I don't know. I have ATIP that as well, but I haven't received it. But I do believe that the city, they will provide me with the ATIPs we all asked for before the election started, before the end of the election. I do believe the city will work in good faith and provide the rest of the information we've provided on that. But we can fix the problem, just working with council to be sure that they've been briefed for press releases and social needs, because the last thing we want is the public having incorrect information on social media from elected officials.
Yeah, fair enough. And so when I get my hands on that particular document, there's no problem for me to get an answer from whether it be the challenger, the mayor, Danny Breen, and or Ron Ellsworth, who generally speaks to these housing-related approval matters. So you send me what you got and I'll follow up.
That's excellent. Yeah, I'll send you the social media post as well as the ATIP and the results of the ATIP. That's excellent, Patty. Thank you.
I appreciate that, and I will absolutely do what I can to get the accurate numbers out there, because, I live here, and I know the issue regarding whether it be rental vacancies and the number of houses that we need to build. Even when we were told that, based on the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, that we had to build, 66,000 in the next 6 years. Of course, that was unrealistic. John Abbott actually boiled it back down to specific regions and the required number of houses, or the forecasted required number of houses, and it was nowhere near those big numbers. But I will chase this because I'm actually really curious about it now.
Yeah, and you don't want to mask how far behind the city is, because we need development, and without this, we're not going to have the housing units and all. I've been meeting with so many community organizations that are trying to combat the homelessness and addiction crisis we're facing, and their number one thing is a roof over people's heads. If you don't have a roof, how are you even able to provide people the tools to improve on these social issues? And that's why I'm so focused on development so that we can help our residents of the city of St. John's.
Yeah, fair enough. And it just brings me to another point, is that not every housing unit is created equal. There's a distinct difference between affordable housing and otherwise. There's a distinct difference even inside the envelope of affordable housing, because it's one thing for seniors, someone who requires additional wraparound supports, whether it be mental health or addictions, or someone with a disability. So we sometimes lump everything into the same trough when it's not that. And so we have to be, I have to be careful. I try to be mindful of talking to specifics as opposed to just the generalities of housing.
Oh, 100%. And, I'm meeting actually with tenants of affordable units this week on Friday evening. I have a big meeting there with them. Because we want to talk about the mismanagement of the current resident affordable units owned by the city of St. John's. Now, they have stated they're not building anymore. I hope we can change that. I truly do. I want to advocate for it. Affordable units are needed, but the management of the current affordable units needs to be reviewed, 100%.
No question. Ivy, I wish you good luck on the hustings, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. We'll be talking again.
Okay, sounds good. Bye-bye. Ivy Hamley, running for the mayor of town. City of St. John's. Let's take our final break of the morning. Don't go away. Welcome back. Let's go to line number 4. Say good morning to the PC member for Terra Nova. He's the Deputy House Leader. That's Lloyd Parrott. Lloyd, you're on the air. Lloyd?
Yeah, you got me there?
I got you now. You're on the air.
How you doing, buddy?
Excellent today. How about you?
Good, thanks. Good. Patty, I just wanted to call in today to talk about, local benefits, community benefits. We're 10 years in now to the Liberal government, and there's still been no announcement on any community benefits agreements. I know a lot of people question what that means, but in 2019, we brought a resolution to the House of Assembly that clearly said that we'd put Newfoundlanders and Labradorians first when it came to all natural resource and public projects, public infrastructure. So it was unanimously approved 100%. All the Liberals agreed with it. And there was mandate letters given to the ministers, several different ministers over the last 6 years, and still nothing on it. And I guess the big question is, what does that mean? Well, it means that we're still shipping jobs outside of Newfoundland and Labrador for work that's being carried out here. And, I mean, you don't have to look any further than the hospital in Grand Falls, the mental health facility, the long-term care facilities, Marathon Gold. All of these construction that's happened have left people out. We've had people in from outside, and it's simply not acceptable. Now we're moving forward, and so we've got no idea what Beta Nord is going to look like when it comes to local people working. And it's not just Beta Nord. So we talk about the MOU and Churchill Falls, and they've made it sound like there's all of these jobs associated with this agreement, and this agreement is packaged up into one thing. And the reality is that the Churchill Falls 1, Churchill Falls 2, the transmission line from Churchill Falls to Labrador West, the transmission line to the Quebec border, none of that comes under the agreement that was made for Muskrat Falls. So we have billions, not millions, billions of dollars of work. I mean, if you can carry on and include the upgrades that are required in Beta Spear, the upgrades that are required in Holyrood, it amounts to billions of dollars of work, and we don't know that Newfoundlanders and Labradorians are even going to be a priority. And it's long past due. Our stance, and Tony Wakeham, our leader, has been very firm on this. And as a matter of fact, he's made an announcement that all natural resource projects and public infrastructure contracts in the province valued at more than $500,000 will require a community benefits agreement. And Patty, those agreements should be done up front so businesses understand what's required to come here and go to work, and so we can put our people to work first. And it's long overdue.
A couple of things. So benefits agreements and community benefits are inherently linked, but they're kind of two different things. We're told, and whether or not this is true, I'll leave it up for history to tell the tale, is the benefits agreement for jobs inside the MOU, and that's 2 transmission projects, Upper Churchill 2 or the expansion, whatever, and Gull Island, same as it would have been for Muskrat. And I think we adhere to it pretty well. I'm not so sure we hit the 100% target, but qualified people from Labrador first, then the island, then the rest of the country, then the rest of the world. Is that not your understanding if we just stick with the MOU for a second?
It's absolutely not my understanding. My understanding is that it's only the Gull Island project that comes under the previous MOU, the previous benefits agreement for Muskrat, and that was a part of it when it was done. It had nothing to do with the expansion of Churchill Falls. It had nothing to do with the transmission lines. And the transmission line that came across the province certainly came, the LIL and all that came under that agreement. But this is a total separate entity that's going in the opposite direction, and it is not part of the MOU. The MOU does not stipulate any of that. Those questions were asked back in January. We couldn't get an answer from Hydro at the time. As a matter of fact, they came in with the information that was over 10 years old and said there was 10 million man-hours, Patty. That's simply one of the silliest things I've ever heard. I mean, it was 50 million man-hours to build Muskrat. This project is substantially bigger. And they're saying there's only 10 million man-hours. They don't have a grip on what it's going to be. And, it's part of my concern. But my understanding, certainly from my conversations with the Newfoundland Labrador building trades, with Newfoundland Labrador Hydro, and questions that were asked in the House of Assembly, is that while the Gull Island portion of the MOU comes under the previous agreement, the rest of it does not.
Fair enough. But inside the lines that we will own and operate and build, I assume we can attach our own benefits agreement to that. We don't have to deal with or have Hydro-Quebec involved in that at all, right?
Fair ball, Patty, but we had that same ability under the projects that I listed before, yet we had sheet metal workers from Quebec, we've had people from New Brunswick, we've had people all across Canada. And I'm not saying that there isn't going to come a time when we don't need to bring workers in here, whether it be on travel cards to work full-time or whatever.
Yeah.
But we should not have Newfoundlanders and Labradorians sitting on their hands who are qualified to do the work on public projects or natural resource projects, while companies like Marco and other companies are bringing people in here on these 3Ps and other public projects and certainly the natural resource projects because they think they can get it cheaper. And Patty, I don't know how the math is difficult. $100, if it's $100 an hour to pay someone from the mainland to come here and work, and it costs $110 an hour to get a Newfoundlander to work, well, $110 is going back into our coffers, or $100 is leaving the province. And it's not just about that. It's about prioritizing the people that pay taxes, that live here. And Patty, the biggest thing I always say, and we've been saying it as a party for a long time, two serious issues in this province have always been geography and population. And the only way that we're going to build our population is to ensure that the jobs are here and people can stay here and work. It's pretty simple math.
Yeah, I'll just ask you one question that adds some complexity to it. Look, number one, I live here, my children live here, my family lives here. I want people from here to get jobs, full stop. Then you talk about what we'll call the general contractor. Whether it be SNC Lavalin, which is probably not a great choice because there's a benefits agreement very much different than building a hospital or a penitentiary or whatever the case may be. Some of the biggest contractors, they also own in full or in part groups that would be known as subcontractors. Some would be based in Nova Scotia, some might be based in Moncton, some might be based here, some might be based in Boston. So how do we have it enshrined in contractual relations that they must use contractors from here versus the companies that they either own some of or all of that we would call subcontractors? That's a tricky piece of business.
Yeah, it sounds tricky, but here's part of what we can do is that we can prioritize how we do it. So, for example, Marathon Gold, let's just say for argument's sake, it's a 90% requirement for local content. Well, that local content should be broken down into every subcontract. So then a contractor, has the ability to utilize 10% from away, 90% when they're hiring inside. Instead, they put it over the whole project, and they go out and they hire the cheapest labor they can here in the province, and they bring their own people in. And our own skilled people, here's the problem. We need to prioritize local skilled tradespeople. Local companies and opportunities for apprentices, women and gender diverse individuals and Indigenous peoples. And if we don't, then we will lose our skill set. So we sit here and we brag about our ability to build oil rigs or wind farms or what, and that's another big one. I mean, there's no benefits agreement for any of these wind discussions, and here we are 4 years into it. It should be one of the first things that gets on the table. It should be one of the very first things that's looked after, because then we know where we stand and whether or not a project is going to go forward. We can ramp up in schools, educate young people so they're ready to go into the workforce. It's just we always put the cart before the horse.
I say this all the time, benefits agreements when we're talking about things that produce a royalty, whether it be in minerals or oil or in gas or in hydro, those types of things. That's all fine and dandy. That's a good thing for the government coffers, but there's nothing quite like filling up my pockets, not the government's pockets. That has a bigger economic impact, whether it be reliance on services or not. So there's endless argument to be made for jobs are a much bigger deal than royalties.
Patty, listen, Tony Wakeham has said this lots of times, and there's no statement that he makes that I'm behind more than this one. We need more people paying less taxes, not less people paying more taxes. We talk about right now a $750 million prison that's going to get built. We haven't heard one thing on a local benefits agreement. And in 2019, it was supported 100% by this Liberal government and every single minister that's in there. And 6 years later, they still haven't gotten it done. And the reality is that we bleed our workforce away. We bleed our population away because the long-term sustainable work isn't here. And even worse, the short-term mega project work is slipping away now. And if we look at what's going to happen in Churchill Falls, it's a big deal. It needs to happen. It needs to be a serious priority for any government going forward.
Yeah, and we all have to stop leaning on mega projects as the panacea, because it's not. Appreciate your time, Lloyd. You've had the last word.
All right, you take care, Patty.
You too.
Thanks for taking it.
Bye-bye. Lloyd Parrott, PC member of Terra Nova. Good show today. Big thanks to all hands, and we will indeed pick up this conversation again tomorrow morning right here on VOCM and Big Land FM's Open Line. On behalf of the producer, David Williams, I'm your host, Paddy Daly. Have yourself a safe, fun, happy day. We'll talk in the morning. Bye-bye.